You all are perfect and amazing. Welcome to State of Awareness. My name is Wright. I'm just going to get right into this. So this video is about time, control, and separation. So the ego only knows the 3D, therefore it treats everything as separate. That's how problems and wars and strife end up happening throughout this density. And when it wants to control something, it fears it until it doesn't want to surrender. This is why people have difficulty surrendering to this stuff. Okay. And then time is a man-made construct, which obviously was through ego. So obviously the ego created time. That's why there's the time illusion, 3D illusion, and the ego illusion. They're all one and the same. The ego doesn't want peace. It wants prediction. It always tries to solve problems. It's always wanting to know the outcome. It's always trying to figure out its outcome. So when it's sitting here throwing thoughts and inner arguments into your mind, it's trying to create a situation in your mind based off what it's seeing out here, based off your belief system. That's why it's critical to use the ego as a tool. It only wants predictions for the future or worries about the past to make sure that you don't make a future prediction that is wrong to the ego, because the number one thing for the ego is your survival. But awareness is always in the now moment. It already knows. Awareness is the knowing. Ego is doubting. And since the ego can't observe itself, what else is there? Awareness behind the thought of the ego. The ego only survives through time. It either worries about the future, or it projects worry onto the future, or fixates on the past by trying to say, oh, I wish we didn't do that. Oh, I wish, how come it could have just been different, and blah, 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 blah. Listen, you don't need to take credit for what the ego did. You don't need to take credit for the ego's thought patterns. You just stop identifying with the identification of the mind altogether. That's why when the moment you believe in time, you create lack. The ego is the only thing that believes in lack, because it's always lacking an object, and it always projects it out as like, oh, this is going to take long. Oh, this desire is very big. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to get there. See, it's always worried about time and a future event, or it's trying to figure out the how and when, no matter what. And you're not that. Those thoughts are appearing to you. Ra states that the illusion is there to create separation until we form unity with one another. So when we figure out that everyone is one, that there's only one acting power here, we will be stuck in a world of illusions, reacting to either past memories or future events, or something that we're placing our attention on in the now moment. And it's perfect. It causes enough suffering for either someone to find religion, seek spirituality, or they go harm themselves, or they harm other people. But once you understand the fact that the imagination proves oneness, because you wouldn't be able to think, imagine, or visualize without there being no separation. If there was true separation, you wouldn't have the ability to do that. We would just be walking around here like robots, basically, okay? And the mind to itself, it thinks that if it can manage circumstances, it can delay suffering. But really, you might as well just go through the storm and deal with the suffering as much as possible, until you realize that, wow, I don't have to identify with this. I do not have to claim these thoughts. These emotions aren't mine. These thoughts are not mine. The circumstances don't matter. It's all being perceived through the wrong lens, and it's being perceived through the unconscious part of you, the ego, because the ego can only be an unconscious movement. In awareness, since the ego is a distortion inside of awareness, awareness ends the distortion because it recognizes that there's no time gap, there's no delay in imagination in the now moment where awareness is at. Yeah, you went through the experience. Yeah, you remember it, but you don't have to claim it anymore, because the ego will provide that suffering. And since it's a survivalist, it needs you to remember the memory so you don't do this shit again. This is why people end up messing up in relationships, is because they get so fixated on like, oh, I remember dating this narcissist, or I remember dating this cheater, I remember dating this guy that was a piece of shit to me, I remember dating this abuser. And then it puts you in a box, and then you keep doing it over and over again because the ego is looking for proof in your future relationships. And then the LOA community makes it a self-concept issue, where you date the guy or the woman, and then boom, you end up getting presented the same shit. They'll sell you an issue and give you a band-aid to it, when I'm telling you just to stop identifying with the mind altogether. Let's say you're waiting on a text back, and the ego will create saying, oh, it's been 2 days, they must not care. So it's obviously forming some suffering right there. And as awareness, you can give yourself a text, you can give yourself the phone call, you can see yourself having it right now, but the ego wants to just fixate on the object. And typically once someone disengages with the thought patterns in their mind, because it's all coming from the thought, or from the mind, the thoughts, typically the person ends up texting them, or they end up showing up, or they end up reaching out. It might not be to the ego standard right off the bat for the text of what you are envisioning, but nonetheless, you lower the resistance because you're not identifying with the resistance, because you're not the ego. So in closing, you've never had a control issue. You just have a belief in separation, and that belief in separation is apparent to you. So there's really no separation, and stillness rearranges everything. Not because it's doing something. It's because it's being that. You want to be still. Stop listening to the mind. The mind doesn't know what the hell it's talking about. It doesn't know what the fuck it's talking about, okay? It's just a bunch of conditioned thought loops in your mind that are just running on autopilot, trying to keep you stuck in an identity that you never were to begin with. It's all appearing to you. Your beliefs, your thoughts, and your emotions. And then when the ego tries to manage life, basically control, it will show you that once you release and surrender, that you were never in control to begin with, and there was nothing ever to manage. You just had to have a shift in perception. Again, you guys are all perfect and amazing. You got this, all right? Stop identifying with the mind. Stop thinking that you need to be fixed, because you never needed to be fixed. You just needed a recognition that you were never separate from anything to begin with.